Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of Death Row Executions. Today's story is on Clarence Ray Allen, who was executed at the age of 76 on January 17, 2006 in the state of California for his role in killing 3 people. When Clarence was executed, he was the second oldest inmate to be executed since executions were reinstated in 1976. Clarence Ray Allen was born on January 16, 1930 in Blair, Oklahoma. Clarence claimed that he was part Choctaw and was a member of the Muskegon Indian tribe. Clarence grew up in a poor family, and some of his earliest memories were him picking cotton as a child. He always dreamed of making something of himself, and when he was old enough, he moved to Fresno, California, and started his own security company. After dating Helen Sevier for about a year, Clarence proposed, and the two got married when he was 17. Clarence's relationship was going well, his company was doing well, and many thought of him to be an honest, charming, and hardworking young man. His dreams were coming true, and he began making a name for himself. He went from renting out a shack for $75 a month to owning a ranch with beautiful horses. His lot was so big that he had a swimming pool and an airplane. Even though Clarence was living life and was financially stable, an honest way of living was too mundane for Clarence. Clarence switched from being an honest and charming man to a twisted criminal. He did keep his ambitious mindset because he quickly started his own gang called the Ray Allen Gang. His personality was rubbing off on the right people for his gang, and men were joining in flocks. Some of the men he recruited were once honest, hardworking men like he used to be. Clarence taught the new members of the Ray Allen Gang the ins and outs of the criminal world. He gave them rules to abide by, and the number one rule in his gang was no snitching, and if someone broke that rule, they would be killed. The Ray Allen Gang took part in robbing residential homes and businesses. For a while, all of the robberies were a quick in and out without anyone ever getting hurt in the process. It wasn't until 1974 when things changed. Clarence knew a man named Brian Schledowitz, and Brian's parents, Ray and Fran, owned Fran's Market in Fresno, California. Clarence felt that since he knew the owners of Fran's Market, it would be an easy place to rob. Clarence then came up with a plan that included his son Roger and Roger's girlfriend Mary Sue Kitts. He also recruited the help from some Ray Allen gang members, Carl Mayfield and Lee Furrow. Clarence's plan was for Roger to invite Brian over to their house so they could all go for a swim. Typically, when Brian would come over to swim, he would change into his swim shorts and leave his regular clothes in the bathhouse. Clarence told his crew that once Brian got in the pool, either Carl or Lee would go into the pockets of his pants and steal his keys. One of the keys on his chain would be a key to Fran's Market. While this was happening, Mary Sue's job would be to get extra friendly with Brian and pretend she was really into him. When it was time to follow through with the plan, everything went according to how Clarence wanted it to go. Brian had even believed and accepted Mary Sue's advances and had asked her out on a date later that evening. When Mary Sue was out on her date with Brian, Clarence and his crew used Brian's keys to unlock the front door of Fran's Market. Once inside, they made it to the store's safe, but they were unable to pry it open. After unsuccessfully trying to open the safe, they decided to load it in their vehicle so they could try and open it elsewhere. Once they got to a secure location and were able to work on it again, they were finally able to get it opened, and they counted $500 worth of money and $10,000 worth of money orders. Clarence and his crew began traveling throughout Southern California and stopping at different banks to cash the money orders. They were feeling on top of the world because no one was suspecting them of the robbery, and they were in the clear. Little did they know, Mary Sue's acting was turning into genuine feelings because her guilty conscience was eating at her, and she decided to come clean to Brian. She divulged Clarence's whole plan and how the men were able to steal his keys to the market when he was in the swimming pool. She even told Brian how she was also a pawn in the plan. Brian was hurt, disgusted, and most of all, very angry. He immediately met up with Roger and asked him if what Mary Sue told him was true. Roger owned up to the crime. After the confrontation, Roger met up with his father Clarence and told him what had just transpired. Angered, Clarence told him that Mary Sue and Brian needed to be dealt with. Clarence then drove to Brian's parents' house in an attempt to get his parents to believe he had nothing to do with the robbery. Clarence told them that Brian was like a son to him and after a while, he indirectly shot himself in the foot by implying he really did have something to do with the robbery. He then told Ray and Fran that if they tried to cause any trouble, they might reap what they sow, and he had also heard rumors about people wanting to damage their house. Shortly after that encounter, Clarence paid fellow gang member Lee Furrow $50 to drive by the Schledowitz house to do a drive-by. After Lee shot up the Schledowitz house, Clarence now had his mind on Mary Sue. He held a gang meeting and told his crew that Mary Sue broke their #1 rule of no snitching and she had to be dealt with. The whole gang made a decision that Mary Sue should die. Clarence told his crew to pretend to be cool with Mary Sue and invite her to a party that would be held at his girlfriend Shirley Dockel's apartment. When Mary Sue showed up, Lee would offer her pills and ask her to get high with him. He said that one pill would be the actual drug and the other pill would be filled with HCN. After killing her, they would then dispose of her body. Some gang members agreed with the plan, but Lee said that he did not want to be the one to give 5'1", 100-pound Mary Sue the kill pill. Shirley also said she wasn't okay with the plan because she didn't want anyone dying in her apartment. She didn't care whether or not Mary Sue died, but just not in her apartment. Clarence told them that his plan was the only way, but Lee continued complaining. Clarence finally told Lee that if he did not kill Mary Sue, then he would be killed as well, and 2 murders were just as easy as killing one person. Not wanting to die himself, Lee agreed to follow through with Clarence's plan. Gang members invited Mary Sue to the house party, and she came not knowing what sinister plans were to come. Lee and fellow gang member Carl Mayfield did what they were supposed to do and offered Mary Sue some pills, but she refused them. She responded by telling them she liked to drink wine when she got high and there was no wine available at the party. The men called Clarence to update him on Mary Sue refusing the pills, and Clarence told them he did not care how she died, but they needed to kill her that night. Later on that evening, the men tried offering Mary Sue some pills again, but she refused a second time. Still not knowing what to do, the men phoned Clarence once more, and he told them that he was coming to the apartment, angered that the top dogs in his gang were unable to come up with a different plan to kill Mary Sue. When Clarence arrived, he spoke with Lee and told him that if he left without killing Mary Sue, he would be killed as well. Lee was alone with Mary Sue, and he began to physically assault her. In the middle of the struggle, the phone rang, and it was Clarence on the phone asking if Mary Sue was dead yet. Lee said no, and was instructed to hurry up and get the job done. The phone call ended, and Lee walked over to a weakened Mary Sue and completed the job of killing her with his bare hands. Once the job was done, it was now time for them to follow through with Clarence's plan of disposing her body in a canal. Lee dismembered Mary Sue, wrapped her up, and then tied stones to it. While Lee was doing this, Clarence was the lookout, making sure no curious cars came by. Once Lee was done, he and other gang members tossed her body in the canal. The day after Mary Sue's body went missing forever, Lee went missing as well. Gang members asked Clarence where Lee went, and he told them that Lee went to Mexico and he paid someone $50 to kill him there. Clarence, however, lied for whatever reason, and Lee ended up popping up again and helping Clarence in future robberies. The Ray Allen gang stayed low for a while, but after about 6 months of little to no action, Clarence wanted to continue on with signature Ray Allen gang robberies. Instead of using old gang members, he wanted them to continue to lay low, so he hired 2 new recruits, Alan Robinson and Benjamin Meyer. Clarence made sure to instill in these new members the #1 rule of the gang, which was no snitching. He even told them that once upon a time a girl was mouthy and they had to get rid of her, and now she was sleeping with the fishes. Clarence was also quoted saying, "If you bring anybody in my house that snitches on me or my family, I'll waste them. There's no rock, bush, nothing he could hide behind." Benjamin asked Clarence what would happen to them if they were in jail and could not get out. Clarence responded by saying, "You've heard of the long arm of the law before? Well, don't underestimate the long arm of this Indian. I will reach out and waste you." Alan and Benjamin were in, and Clarence had them focus on robbing Kmart stores because he had a foolproof method for getting away with robberies from that store. Members of the Ray Allen gang robbed a Kmart on February 10, 1977, and they got away with $16,000. Even though they came out with a lot of money, Clarence thought new member Allen did not do a good job during the robbery and wanted to have him killed. Instead of killing him, he ended up replacing him with a new gang member by the name of Larry Green. The following month, in March of 1977, Clarence and his crew, including new member Larry Green, robbed a different Kmart store, but this time, Larry messed up 10 times worse than Allen did a month prior to this new hit. Larry accidentally shot an innocent bystander, and it ruined their perfect track record of never hurting anyone during a robbery. Police were called to the scene, and Clarence, along with Larry and Ben Meyer, were arrested. Clarence had a trial, and he was convicted of robbery, attempted robbery, and assault with a deadly weapon. With the Ray Allen gang's leader locked up and unable to control his gang, everything started to fall apart, and all of the gang members started talking and eventually snitching on each other. Word got around about Mary Sue Kitts, and even though her body was never recovered, Lee Furrow made a deal with prosecutors in exchange for testimony against Clarence, and Clarence was charged with burglary, conspiracy, and the first-degree murder of Mary Sue Kitts. Almost all of the members of Clarence's gang testified against him, and even his own son Roger testified against him as well. Brian was also a witness who testified about what happened to him before Mary went missing. For this second trial, Clarence was convicted of all charges, and he was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. He was transferred to Folsom Prison, and while at the Folsom Prison, Clarence met Billy Ray Hamilton and Gary Brady. Both men fell head over heels with Clarence's charm, and they soon started following after him like puppies and doing everything he asked of them, just like his old gang members. Billy and Gary were up for parole and were expecting to be released from prison. Clarence also had an appeal coming up, and he told Billy and Gary that he would give them $25,000 if they killed a few people that could possibly ruin his parole hearing. Billy agreed to help Clarence out. He could not trust his son Roger, so he was going to reach out to his other son Kenny. Kenny would pay Billy and provide him with guns and transportation. When Billy was finally released from prison, he immediately met up with Kenny after taking a bus and meeting him at a Fresno bus depot. Kenny followed through with giving Billy everything he needed to kill his intended targets. His intended targets were none other than Ray, Fran, and Brian Schledowitz. Connie Barbeau, Billy's girlfriend, knew of Kenny's plan and wanted to be included and tagged along with him. She was quoted saying that a few $1,000s and some crank made her willing to snuff out life. Kenny let Billy use a car, and in the car was a shotgun, a revolver, and shotgun shells. Billy drove with Connie to Fran's Market, but once inside, they saw a young boy and they refused to commit any murders with someone like him inside of the store. The couple left temporarily, but returned later that evening. Billy walked into the store with a shotgun, and Connie walked in with a pistol. There were 4 employees in the store, with one of them being Brian. Billy had all of the employees grouped together and instructed Connie to watch over them. Billy then walked Brian to the stockroom alone and shot him in the head. After killing Brian, he asked an employee by the name of Douglas White where the safe was, but Douglas responded that there was no safe. Angered by the response, Billy fatally shot Douglas in the chest. The loud noises and the gruesome scene caused a female employee by the name of Josephine Rocha to start crying out loud. Her reaction angered Billy yet again, and he fatally shot her, piercing her through her heart. Joe Rios was the last employee left. Billy attempted to finish the job and tried shooting Joe in the face, but Joe put his hands up and the shotgun blasted through his elbow instead of his face. Joe was able to convince Billy that he was dead. Billy, thinking that he killed every witness, turned to Connie and said, "Let's go, baby." The couple walked out of the store, but they were ordered to stop by a Jack Abbott who had armed himself after hearing the shotgun go off multiple times. Billy stopped, but lifted his shotgun, aimed at Jack, and fired. Jack attempted to shoot Billy, but he missed. While the shootout was happening, Connie ran back into the market and hid in the women's bathroom. Billy made contact with Jack, and Jack was also able to hit Billy with a bullet. Injured, Billy ran towards his getaway car, and as he was running away, Jack shot again and hit Billy in the foot. Not wanting to go back to prison, Billy continued to hobble away, and as soon as he got into the car, he drove off, leaving Connie behind. Police arrived at the scene of the crime, but they were too late. After a search of the market, They found all of the bodies, and they also found Connie hiding in the bathroom. Police arrested Connie, and on Billy's end, after he escaped, he called Kenny. On the phone call, Billy said, "I lost my kitten." He also said that he needed a new car because police most likely had a description of the car he was using. Kenny met up with Billy again and exchanged cars with him. Later on, Billy headed to Modesto, California, where his old prison mate, Gary Brady, lived. Gary agreed to let Billy hide out at his place, even though Billy told him that he killed multiple people for Ray. While Billy was laying low, he was also running low on cash and wanted the $25,000 Clarence promised him. He asked Gary's wife to write a letter to Ray in prison, and she agreed. Gary's wife put a return address on the letter, and that proved to be a mistake on their part. Billy could not wait patiently for Clarence's reply or money, so he decided to rob a liquor store directly across the street from his hideout. Billy had nowhere to run, and he was soon arrested by the Modesto police. Billy was locked up, and Kenny got locked up as well for drug possession with intent to sell. While Kenny was locked up, investigators tied him to the recent murders at Fran's Market, and they decided to question him. Kenny remained calm and denied having any part in the murders. After a week, though, he did have a change of heart and agreed to testify against Billy, Connie, and his father Clarence. In exchange for his testimony, Kenny wanted to be placed in protective custody and to be given his prison of choice because he did not want his quote-unquote long-armed father reaching out to get him. It was now June of 1981, and Clarence was now awaiting his third trial. He was charged with 3 counts of murder under special circumstances and conspiracy to commit murder. Clarence's son Kenny testified against him during their preliminary hearing, but it wasn't enough. Prosecutors needed him to testify at the actual trial, but Kenny had a change of heart, and as he was on the stand, he changed his testimony and decided to stick up for his father. The prosecution was not happy and immediately withdrew his plea bargain and charged Kenny with 3 counts of murder as well. After realizing that he too would be charged for 3 murders, Kenny changed his mind once again and decided to be 100% truthful on the stand and testify against Clarence. After Kenny testified, Clarence took to the stand to express his innocence. He denied having anything to do with the murders or participating in the conspiracy to kill anyone. The only thing he admitted to was the letters he wrote that were presented as evidence during trial and for transporting and disposing Mary Sue's body. Even though he admitted to disposing of Mary Sue's body, he continued to deny having anything to do with her murder. Kenny's wife took to the stand, and she talked about her husband, Kenny, by saying he was a drug fanatic and a psychotic killer who planned and went through with the murders at Fran's Market. Before she finished testifying, though, she ended up saying that she falsified evidence about the murders. The defense brought in 2 Folsom prison inmates to testify on behalf of Clarence. They testified that Gary and Billy never met in prison. When they were questioned by prosecutors, they each separately admitted that they would lie to protect Clarence. The trial was a whirlwind of different personalities and people changing their testimonies on the stand and lying under oath. There were a total of 58 witnesses that were called to the stand, and after 23 days of trial, on August 22, 1982, a jury convicted Clarence of murders, conspiracy to murder 8 witnesses, and 3 counts of murder under special circumstances. The special circumstances were him plotting to murder witnesses who could testify against him, and it made him eligible for the death penalty. A little over a week, the penalty phase commenced, and after just a day of deliberating, the jury came back with the sentence of death. Clarence spent over 20 years on death row, and on one appeal, his legal team expressed that he should be pardoned because of his old age, the time he had been on death row, and his physical state. All of Clarence's appeals were denied, and the California Supreme Court affirmed his death sentence. Clarence was set to die on January 17, 2006. For his last meal, he had buffalo steak, fry bread, a bucket of all-white meat KFC fried chicken, sugar-free pecan pie, sugar-free walnut ice cream, whole milk, and other traditional Native American foods. Shortly after Clarence enjoyed his last meal, he wrote a final statement to the public which read, "First of all, I'd like to say how good the last meal was, how much I enjoyed it, and how much I love my family and friends who have stood by me all these years. I'd also like to thank my friends from Europe who have written to me, and my spiritual advisor, Richard Williams, One lady, Henny Rip from Holland, and another lady from Italy, Christine Kaufman, who I gave an Indian name of Morning Sun, and she's been that to me. And all of the inmates on death row that I'm leaving behind, that they will be joining me one day. One good friend I've got that I hate to leave behind, who's been my neighbor for 20 years, is Ward Weaver. And all of my family that was here to visit me during this period, I love you very much for being with me during this time. My last words will be, Hoka hey, it's a good day to die. Thank you very much. I love you all. Goodbye. Clarence was executed with an eagle feather on his chest, a medicine bag around his neck, and a beaded headband around his head on January 17, 2006 by method of lethal injection at the San Quentin State Prison in California at 12:20 a.m., and he was pronounced dead at 12:38 a.m. When he was executed, he became the oldest person in the state of California to be executed. Thank you all for watching another episode of Death Row Executions. Let me know what you guys think of this story in the comments below. And now for discussion and question time. I think it's great that gang members came clean about the death of Mary Sue, but without a body, do you think it's right to sentence someone to life in prison? I think about many gangs who are known for killing innocent people. What if they killed someone and pinned it on someone in the gang, even though they had nothing to do with it, or created a fictitious person? No body, no evidence, just testimony of lying gang members.